Welcome to Carbon Connects, looking at the challenges pharma has faced, it currently is facing, and what it will be facing in the future.
So what we try to do differently is actually to start and say, what are we trying to achieve? And because I think COVID was actually the biggest A/B test the planet has ever seen. I really enjoy different mindsets, different cultures. I'm a very curious person. I think when you are able to listen, you are able to learn. We need to think about how can the role of marketing evolve. I believe marketing is important, but I think a few things have changed. And just 3 examples.
Hello, I'm Henry Regan and welcome to this episode of Carbon Connects, where I'm joined by Patrick. Hello, Patrick.
Nice to meet you and thanks for having me today.
No problem. Tell me a little bit more about yourself and how you got into the position you're in at the moment.
So my name's Patrick. I work for Daiichi Sankyo, the European headquarter, which is located in Munich, and I have the pleasure to lead the digital excellence team there. So how I got there is I'm actually highly qualified. I studied biology, so then I was a consultant and I started to work in pharma because as a consultant I was able to work on a lot of healthcare projects, go to market. How can we help companies, for example, to help patients with diseases who require an inhaler, but it was always very short. And it was frustrating for me. I really wanted to drive a change. I'm very purpose-driven. I moved to Celgene, worked for the German affiliate and the European headquarter and had the opportunity to work in many different functions, which helped me to understand actually doctors and patients better. Market research, finance, to also understand the numbers and the business impact on top of the customers, long-range planning, which was very helpful for strategy. And then I was able to go to Daiichi Sankyo Europe and to work first as the assistant of the European CEO and then got my first department. And the idea of the role when I joined was to leverage synergies because 6 years ago Daiichi Sankyo reached a point where we started to have a lot of redundancies, inefficiencies, because Daiichi Sankyo was significantly growing before the oncology business unit was launched. And this gave me the opportunity to interact with all the general managers, with all the VPs or above, which again was tremendous to understand the strategy and to understand what is the impact on the patient. And when COVID hit, we made the decision to change our customer engagement model and to make a conscious decision to put all digital functions in one team. And this is basically when digital excellence was born. I had to pitch for this position. It was not, given to me just like that. And since 3.5 years, I'm actually a very, very proud dad of the digital team.
Lovely. And you told me that you wanted to have an international job, and actually you found yourself working 20 minutes from your home. So that is a wonderful. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, that's true. So I really enjoy different mindsets, different cultures. I'm a very curious person. I think when you are able to listen, you are able to learn. And I really tried hard throughout my career to work abroad, in the US or somewhere in Europe, but it never actually happened. And when I had the opportunity to join Daiichi Sankyo and went out for the interview, and I Googled actually where the European headquarters is, I realized it's actually even closer than any company I ever worked in my life before, which is just a 20-minute walk away from my home and 10 minutes through a beautiful park. So I can go home every day, enjoy the nature. And it actually helps them really to focus because it's a good way to calm down and to really think about why am I doing this.
So you had a restructure before COVID and then COVID hit. What was the upskilling like for the workforce?
Yeah. So what we try to do differently is actually to start and say, what are we trying to achieve? Because I think COVID was actually the biggest A/B test the planet has ever seen. If we are honest to ourselves, we have seen pharmaceutical industry not visiting doctors ended up in more patients receiving specific drugs to help them. And this was not the result at least we expected at Daiichi Sankyo. And we said, okay, what can we do differently? And this is where we said we really want to be customer-centric. And customer-centric, it took us 3 years to come to a common understanding, is help doctor make the right decisions for their patients. And it was very important for us to get to this common understanding Because with this one single sentence, which everybody in the company knows, you can say whether you work in finance, for example, what does it mean for us? How can I help make doctors the right decisions for their patients? By helping them to reduce the admin work, by helping them to attend congresses easily. The forms are easy to read and understand because the less time they need, the more time they can spend with their patients. So this was very important for us. And the second thing we changed is to say we have a commercial operations team which is really responsible for setting the strategy and working holistically. So we don't have product or brand managers anymore, but we have customer excellence directors. And they need to think about what do customers, so doctors and or patients, need to know about our product, about our portfolio? How can we support patients' organizations or involve patients? Where come digital solutions into play? It doesn't mean they do everything by themselves, but they're asked to really think different. Don't think product, think patient. And this is one of the biggest changes we did. And the second was basically creating the digital team where we said our focus is external, doctors and patients, no process efficiency, engagement only, no clinical trials or other things, and better understanding our customers. This is why one of my 3 teams in the department is advanced analytics, who really works a lot on what do we know about our customers and how can we use this knowledge to internally make better decisions or help people to make informed decisions to plan the engagement itself. The second team is focusing on the engagement solutions, which is from everything you need to know who are your customers, which content do I have, so where is it stored, a content library, and to create the content and send the content and get the customer feedback. So customer satisfaction for NPS when a doctor visits a conference, when a sales rep or an MSL gets visited to understand the impact. And the last one is the digital innovation hub team, which works through partnerships on digital solutions. And if you want, we can also talk about it. We have now 5 solutions live. And all of this is to provide more holistic solutions to patients. Because my passion is to really make sure we evolve into healthcare companies. I get allergic reactions when people say we are not Microsoft or Google, because if you look at Microsoft or Google or Apple, they are not tech companies anymore. They start to transform into health, or they are actually healthcare companies. They don't start to transform, they are actually healthcare companies. And if they can do it, why can we not become healthcare companies, because we started this journey much earlier.
And so what's the next step in that?
So we have 2 steps. So I think one is we need to think about how can the role of marketing evolve. I believe marketing is important, but I think a few things have changed. And just 3 examples. So one is you need a lot of, or not a lot, at least a basic understanding what you can achieve with some type of technological solutions. Which means if you set your strategy and say we want to create personalized content, you need to understand what an A/B test is, how many emails approximately do you need to send, how many tests can I do at the same time. So I'm not expecting a marketer that he or she can do everything, but an advanced analytics team becomes more important in helping defining how success looks like. Because for me, it's not we have sent 100% more emails versus last year. So what? What is the achievement? What does it mean for doctors or patients? You just send double the number of emails. This is it. And I think we need to focus more on what really matters for patients. So how many of these doctors, attended webinars and gave a high rating and said it really helped me to make better decisions or the right decisions for my patients. We have agencies who use generative AI to create content 80% faster. And if they collaborate with big platforms where doctors log in to get information, not to say any names, they can actually cover the whole process. So you just need to say, who is your target group? Then they can match the list, they can populate the content, different concepts, they can test it, and after 1 week they can tell you, this is it. 1 week, much faster across different countries in Europe. And we have the digital solutions which have the potential to reach more patients than ever before. So can we really neglect this or say our job is to produce drugs? And this is where I believe we really need to evolve and think with marketing together, how can we do that? Yeah? And the second area where we need to evolve is, I think, focusing on the human side, because most challenges I observe in the area of working with a digital team are not related to technology. They are not related to data. They are always related to humans. Someone got in a new role and is a leader. Someone is not familiar with how models work. And my experience is, if you go there, don't tell them why they should consult us. Excite them, create an offer where they can't say no. And I can give you one example, in the area of oncology. We have a great drug to treat breast cancer patients. And the challenge is that the drug can cause scars on your lung tissue, which means it becomes more and more difficult for you to breathe, and at some point in time you need to stop the treatment, which is a pity because you need this treatment in order to remain alive, right? And just imagine now you have a digital stethoscope which you put on your chest. It analyzes the sound when you inhale and exhale, and before scars occur on your lung tissue, you would get a warning which says, please pause for some point in time, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, instead of for discontinuing the treatment, and then you move on. And this could mean you double the treatment time, which means you might have another several months or years to live with your husband, with your wife, with your children, with your grandparents. And the good news is this does not only apply to breast cancer patients, but many cancer patients suffer from this interstitial lung disease who creates the scar tissue on the lung. And how cool is that? Put yourself into the shoe of a doctor. A doctor doesn't prescribe a drug. He treats patients with diseases. And if he says this is one of the main reasons why I cannot treat patients the way they deserve it, you not only provide a drug, but you provide a solution to the doctor which helps a lot of his patients, and it helps you when your drug is prescribed on top. And then you have a very holistic solution which is customer focused, and who can say no to this? And if I'm not able to tell the story, am I really in the position to judge any other team to say, why do you say no? Then I need to go back to myself, even though I think marketing needs to evolve, but there's also some things we need to do better, because this is what we can learn from marketing. They are great storytellers, and I think this will also help by focusing on the humans and telling them story they can understand in order to serve patients and doctors.
So you talk about different aspects of the company having difference of opinions. How are you trying to bring those silos together that we obviously know are a problem within pharma?
Yeah. So our experience is that the challenges usually are related to humans, never to the technology or the data. And we actually introduced roles who act like gatekeepers. And I can give you 2 examples. One is our medical affairs team in the cardiovascular space hired a head of medical innovation and strategy. And people ask me like, Patrick, how can such a role not work in your team? And my answer is, medical has some overlap with commercial when it comes about serving patients and doctors, but they also have very specific use cases. For them, it's very important that someone is a doctor and has credibility and understands the data. And is it really easier for us or better to upskill the whole team and transform digital experts into medical experts? Or can we not have a person who is a doctor and has a passion for digital solutions? And we were very lucky that we found such a person, and I talked to my colleague who heads the medical affairs team in cardiovascular in Europe, and we both think this is the right thing to do. And we already start to see that this bears fruit, because this person has the credibility, it doesn't need to build the trust, it comes as of start. And because she has a passion for digital solutions, she is our bridge. So it's not like I do my stuff and tell you what to do, but this is really the glue between the different teams. And I think this is a very effective way of breaking silos, because by having one passionate person, you will upskill both teams over time by training on the job. Without boring education or doing external stuff or you name it, whatever you have in mind, what people will not do, because they don't understand why to do it. The second example is in the area of data. We have what we call advanced analytics translators. So all these models and algorithms are sometimes not easy to understand. And we have a center of excellence in Europe where all the models are built. For example, to give recommendations, how often should you visit which customer, how many emails should you write. So it's basically the omni-channel topic. Right channel, right customer, right timing. In the affiliates, we have this advanced analytics translator, who is an expert usually in data science. And most of them either have found their own company or they did an MBA. So it's, again, the best of both worlds. And they have also an understanding, what does it mean to think strategically, what is important for business. And these people, again, act like bridge persons to talk to the teams, to educate them, to pre-prioritize, and then come back and come and say, you see, we have the following challenges. This is what people don't understand. Mm-hmm. They don't want to use the recommendations because they are afraid that it's not their job anymore. The model will tell them what to do. And just to finish the example in 30 seconds, this is why we created 3 possibilities that sales reps and MSL can contribute. Give model limitations. For example, you cannot change the number of face-to-face visits by more than 50%. Because if you have a relationship for 10 years, you cannot go from 2 to 4 visits from March to June. Yeah, it's impossible. The second thing is they get the recommendations and can adjust them. And we don't limit it. We say if you feel you need to change everything, go for it, but they change only 10 to 15%, which also shows to them the numbers are not completely, insane. Yeah, it makes sense. And the last thing is they can give feedback why they followed the recommendation or not, because there are good reasons why you were not able. COVID, hospital closed, doctor changed, you name it. And this actually built the trust, which was only possible with this new role, because these people take a lot of time to educate and help us understand how can we onboard the people who finally need to use the solutions, because only if they can focus more on having the conversations where the relevant information and services are provided, then the doctors again can make the right decisions for their patients.
So this comes to how patients are using these solutions and making sure that we're having the right decision making and keeping patient-centric at all times. And you said to me that you recently become a patient and that you've seen that firsthand. Tell me how that was for you in terms of how that's going to now impact the role that you're in.
So it was, in the beginning, a little bit scary and fascinating at the same time. So I'm all good, thanks for asking. Why was it a little bit scary and fascinating? Because I have the privilege to work in an industry where I had a very good education. I know how to read clinical trials. I know where to search for information, But this is not possible for everybody to the same extent. And even for me, it was very difficult with all the knowledge I have to even find some specialists who treat this disease, because it's an orphan disease. And to find information, how do you need to contribute yourself by following a diet or, doing specific things which contribute to a positive outcome. And this helped me also better to understand by experience it firsthand why digital is so important and powerful. Because if we can provide this information and it can be found through an easy Google search, for example, or in the future also large language models access, already the internet and can guide you through the right information or provide it to you, it becomes so much easier. And let's be honest, we all know that we have great drugs, but a lot of them don't work properly because patients don't take them properly. And this is where the information becomes relevant and where nothing beats the scalability and simplicity of digital solutions.
And that comes down to adherence as well, and
Absolutely.
How you're using your role in digital to maximize that as well.
Yes. So I think there are a lot of numbers out there, but we talk about billions of dollars, being flushed down the toilet because people should, for example, take 2 pills a day, but they only take 1 or they only take 2 pills 5 times a week, not 7 times a week. But when you get below a certain threshold, the therapy becomes ineffective. And if we talk about very expensive therapy, which come close to 100,000 euros or dollars a year or even more, you don't want to waste that money, because not only it's not good for the patient because this patient potentially dies because he or she doesn't take the medication in the right way, but just imagine what you could do with $100,000 in third world countries, how many patients you could treat by making sure that we use the money more effectively. And this is where I have seen nothing else like digital solutions. Let's just take a company who uses a fruit, yeah, as a brand symbol. They have a pill tracker. And my wife and I started to use it recently. So it's not the most sophisticated one, but what it is, it's the easiest to use, and it takes you 90 seconds to enter the information and get reminded. And I think what you see here is, again, focus on the user, whether this is a person who is still not ill, so it's about well-being, or a patient because he or she suffers from a disease. But even I don't want to spend 10 minutes to be reminded every day, then I don't do it. But because they said it's about simplicity, name of the drug, how much you need to take, what is the unit, how does it look like, when should I remind you? You're even less than 60 seconds, you're done. And I do it once, and this is it. And I carry my mobile phone with me around all day. And I think this simplicity, the user base shows the potential, because only if 10% of the users of this device would do it, we talk about huge amounts of savings, which have everybody, because we can either develop new drugs, new digital solutions, or help countries where the coverage with medications is not as good as in first or second world countries.
You talk from a financial point of view and also spreading the resources around, but what about antimicrobial resistance and the adherence around that? Because obviously that's a factor playing towards that. And how do you see that evolving over the next couple of years?
So I know it's a very urgent and important topic, because when I was a consultant also, I worked for a company who actually developed a device where you can use any type of body liquid, and it automatically detects the bacterial strain and the resistances for the respective antibiotic in half an hour or so automatically, so very easy. And the doctor still sees what are the options you have left, because the moment you want to decide on behalf of the doctor becomes very difficult from a regulatory perspective. But this is not what it did. It was informed decision making. And people are dying because of this. And sometimes you only have one shot. If you have a multi-resistant strain of bacteria and the antibiotic is not working in 24 hours, this is the end of the story. But because there's a focus, I know I work in this industry, but not always on the patient, but also on financial returns. It's not very, lucrative to focus on this area. But I think, again, if we use digital solutions, we can not only educate patients better and say, if I feel better, stop after half of the package of antibiotics, but also to invest more into this area. And pharma got more. I'm also part of the FPIA board of innovation. And this is where you also see more and more activity, because I think pharma realized we really need to prove that we want to do good for the patients. And this is like, a more balanced approach. In some areas you can earn more money, in others less, but what it all has in common is to focus on the patient. And by having a better image, maybe people would listen more to us and value our opinion more, because I think we do a lot of good, actually, but we don't have the best reputation, but sometimes we created this fate for ourselves. And it lies in our hand to change this. This is why I think you touched a very good topic, where we can prove that we really want to make a difference by going into these areas, and again proving how digital can not only help patients and doctors, but also how it can help us to improve the credibility and then have new relationships which are difficult at the moment.
Great, and how are you working with external partners? Because obviously that's going to change with the rise of innovative tools. How do you work with external partners, and what's the best way that they can pivot during a time where everything seems to be kind of going up in the air very quickly?
So we had a journey. In the beginning, we always focused on partnerships. We decided from the start not to develop in-house. Not because we don't believe we can't do it, but because it's much slower and more expensive, and we don't need to reinvent the wheel. In the beginning, we had partnerships with individual companies. For example, supporting, again, cancer patients with their, let's say, psychological well-being. Because if you get the diagnosis, most doctors are good in treatment, but not for psychological support or well-being. And this is where a digital solution can play a great role, to remind you every day, there are not just bad things happening, still remember the good things in life which are there. And by the way, you are improving, you see your mood goes up, your parameters start to improve, you're on the right track. Life can go on, and just be aware about it. And from this, we moved from different countries and different solutions more towards a platform approach, where we act more like an orchestrator. So we said we are not interested in data, and I think this is very different versus other companies, where we want not to own the data, but the payers or insurance companies get the data to see, is the treatment more effective if you combine a digital solution with a drug. And this is sufficient for us to move on, because if we see there's a difference, then we are on the right way, but I don't need to know the name of the patients or the age. It's just about moving in the right direction, and it increases the trust in the solution because we don't get the data. And also, by the way, the company who launched the app doesn't get the data. It's the payer and insurance company only. The second thing we do is we don't pay for partnerships. So we have not invested a single euro in any of the partnerships paying for the service, but we focus and say, what are we trying to achieve? And if we say we try to achieve that more patients are diagnosed earlier to prevent potentially fatal events like a stroke, heart attack, then we all win, because the company, providing the wearables, they can either sell the wearables or charge a premium for using a special service which covers very high risk and high risk patients who can suffer from these events because they have certain risk factors. It helps companies who program or create special algorithms to confirm the first, let's say, pre-screening with more easy to use wearables, but not 100% accuracy. And it helps the companies who have software who are integrated into the hospital information system. Because then a nurse can look at a dashboard where a doctor basically sets thresholds, and if you go and one of your parameter changes and crosses a threshold, we know, is it like doubled it overnight, or did it go up another 2% over the last 8 weeks, which is maybe something very different than doubling overnight. And this means doctors can really see only those patients, for example, we do it for the prevention of stroke, who are in need to be examined further, which saves time, which saves cost, and which would allow us to potentially lower the costs in a European country from 400 to 20 euro per patient. And this is where we actually want to go, have these platform approaches, because in the end it helps us for several reasons. We are known for someone who really supports the healthcare system by lowering costs, which means more patients benefit from a treatment at the right point in time. Some of those patients will receive our treatment. But it also creates new business models, because we could say, why not investing into the company who created the algorithm to confirm basically that the patient has atrial fibrillation, which is a sign that a stroke could occur in the near future. And then you do something like Microsoft and OpenAI. You don't buy the company to run it, but you invest into it and say, if you would get €5 per patient per month and we get €2.50, maybe we don't talk about €100,000 for a treatment for a patient for a year, but we talk about 10 times the number of patients. And this is, I think, where pharma is currently really working hard to think about what are new ways how we can not only generate value, but how we can also generate revenue. Because I think we need to move away from selling drugs only, because let's be honest, if you look at other companies, I have a favorite example like Amazon. They are a healthcare company. They did several tests. They have brick and mortar stores where you can go. They had an insurance for their own employees. They closed it, and people say Amazon failed. I think it was a test to say, should we launch an insurance or should we provide it? They included it in the US in their Amazon Prime offer, which means you actually don't need an insurance to get medical treatment, right? You just pay a certain amount per month where you get generics and OTC on top, and it's delivered via Amazon Prime Express to your home, or you decide to go to a brick and mortar store. And they even started to partner with first pharmaceutical companies to do the last mile delivery. So the only thing they don't do is manufacture the drugs. And honestly, is this really the highest value task in the whole chain? I'm not so sure about it. And I think this is why we really need to think about how we need to transform as an industry, because whether this happens in 3 or 5 years, it doesn't matter. But at the moment, we have too many people who don't believe this is not going to happen. I think this is just a matter of time, and this is why I'm so keen on transforming into a healthcare company, because if we don't do it, we will become a supplier of one of these former tech companies.
Thank you so very much for joining me. That's all we've got time for, but it's been a genuine pleasure. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, and stay tuned.
Thank you so much.
3, 2, 1. You don't want an agency who's chasing revenue and chasing the next project and sees generative AI as a way they're going to make money. What you want an agency to do is the perception of pharma actually massively increased post-COVID, just because suddenly people were engaging with how pharma is currently operating. There are multiple ways to deliver really innovative and interesting experiences while ticking all the compliance boxes, while engaging customers in topics that are relevant and have an impact.